We all have roles in a family. Mine, the one nobody asked for and everyone conveniently forgot. There was a wall in our hallway, just past the dining room. On it hung a framed poster board Mom updated every few years. She called it the Yates Legacy Chart. I used to stare at it like it was a page from a playbill. At the top, in glittery bold letters, the star, Aileen. Next row down, the healer, Jonah. Beneath him, the protector, Dad. Even Mom gave herself a title, the anchor. But under my name, Evelyn, there was nothing, just blank space, like an unfinished sentence no one planned to complete. I remember asking once, maybe I was 8, why don't I have a role? Mom had looked up from her iced tea and said, "You're still becoming, sweetheart. Not everyone's path is clear from the start." Becoming what, exactly? Wallpaper? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. I read that on a poster in my 10th grade civics class, but I'd lived it long before. In my family, if you didn't shine in the ways they pre-approved, you didn't exist. And I wasn't allowed to shine. It wasn't a sob story. It was forensic. My family had constructed a system, and I was the control variable. Constant, invisible, quiet. I remember the day the chart got updated. I was 9, maybe 10, walking back from the kitchen with a juice box. I saw Mom taping a new sheet over the old one. She stepped back to admire her work, like it was some sacred art. I crept up, eyes scanning the laminated surface. There it was, Aileen's title freshly revised. The future. Jonah's upgraded too. The Rock. I scanned down to my name, still blank. I hesitated. What about me? We'll find something for you soon, Mom said without turning. Then she walked off to fold laundry. Aileen had just won a district-wide math contest. She got a weekend trip and a new laptop. Jonah made varsity football at 13. Dad joked that he had shoulders made for legacy. And me, I'd gotten a participation ribbon in a spelling bee and a needs improvement in math, but I also read college-level books. Not that anyone noticed. I stayed in my lane. That was the first time I felt it, this hollowness in the room when I entered, like everyone else knew what part they played, and I was the placeholder. I didn't act out, didn't throw tantrums. I tried to be helpful, setting the table, double-checking chores, memorizing birthdays. Still, I was treated like a footnote. Maybe if I worked harder. In 3rd grade, I started reading above grade level. My teacher, Mrs. Harper, suggested I be tested for the gifted program. I remember the way she crouched beside my desk and whispered, "You're quick, Evelyn. Let's get you into a space where you can stretch." I beamed. I ran home that day, practically skipping. That night, I told Mom at dinner. She smiled, tight-lipped, and said, "Oh, that's interesting." The next week, she had a meeting with Mrs. Harper and the school counselor. She didn't invite me. I waited outside the office, legs swinging, stomach tight. When Mom walked out, she patted my shoulder and said, "You'll stay in your current class, sweetheart. Advanced programs can be overwhelming." That was it. Mrs. Harper never brought it up again. She started giving me simpler tasks. "Stick to what you enjoy," she said once, handing me a coloring worksheet while the other kids worked on logic puzzles. I didn't understand it at first. Then, years later, I found the letter in a folder Mom had tossed during spring cleaning. She'd written to the school, "Evelyn tends to overthink and gets easily discouraged under academic pressure. We prefer she remain in a nurturing, low-stress environment." She made me sound fragile, like a cracked vase you place out of reach, not because it's precious, but because it might shatter. I stopped volunteering answers, stopped asking questions. The smart one was already taken by Eileen. There wasn't room for two. They didn't raise a daughter. They cast a supporting role. I started noticing how often families do this, label kids like soup cans. You're the artist, you're the leader, you're the screw-up. It's subtle, but the labels stick. They determine who gets the good teacher, who gets second chances, who gets to speak without interruption. It's like corporate America, really. Titles shape access. They shape belief. Assistant and associate might sound similar, but only one gets invited to the table. The rest? Background noise. There was one Sunday dinner I remember vividly. I was 15. Mom had made roast chicken. The table was set with linen napkins. Everyone had wine but me, sparkling water in a crystal glass. Aileen had just aced her SATs. Jonah was named team captain. Dad toasted both of them, pride thick in his voice. I waited. Just a moment of eye contact, a question about my week, anything. Instead, I cleared my throat. I've been building a little app. Mom smiled without looking up. That's cute, honey. Aileen built a robot in sophomore year, remember? The table laughed. Not at me exactly, but around me. I nodded, chewed my food, swallowed more than just chicken. That night, in my room, I wrote something down for the first time. I didn't know it yet, but it would become a mantra. They don't get to decide who I am. The chart may have erased me, but something was about to happen that would make it impossible for them to ignore me again. They didn't know it yet, but I had already started rewriting the script they wrote for me. There's a certain kind of quiet that settles into your bones when your effort is praised. For someone else. I learned that kind of silence early. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that presses on your lungs, that makes you smile while swallowing your voice. At school, we had a district-wide science fair. I worked on a project that tracked climate changes using basic sensors and code. I spent 2 weeks fine-tuning it, writing and rewriting lines of code until the results finally aligned. I stayed after school every day, using an old desktop in the library, logged in under a generic student account because my name wasn't registered for advanced use. The day of the presentation, I wore my best denim jacket and brought my printed charts in a borrowed trifold board. I stood next to my project, heart thudding, while the judges nodded politely. My teacher said, "Impressive work, Evelyn," with a hand on my shoulder. I let myself believe something might finally be different. But when they announced the winner, it wasn't me. Not exactly. The award for Best Tech Innovation goes to Eileen Yates. The principal beamed. I blinked. My sister stood up. She walked to the front, smiling modestly. I waited. Maybe she'd say something. Maybe she'd glance at me. Aileen took the plaque, shook hands, thanked the staff. Afterward, in the hallway, I asked, "You submitted my project?" She smiled, shrugging. I added a few things. It was a cool base. Gave me something to build on. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I walked home ahead of everyone and sat on the edge of my bed, jacket still on. That was the moment I stopped believing merit was enough. Later that evening, I heard my mother on the phone. Her voice was hushed, but I caught the words. It makes more sense this way. Evelyn doesn't like the spotlight anyway. She was right. I didn't. Not anymore. There's a different kind of erasure that doesn't happen on paper, but on refrigerators. Around Christmas, Mom sent out the usual family holiday cards. She was particular about them, matching sweaters, specific angles, 3 shots maximum, because no one has time to flip through 10 versions. When our neighbor, Mrs. Carmichael, invited me in to help her decorate her tree, I saw the card pinned to her fridge. I moved closer, smiling at the photo. Until I realized my face was barely visible. Faded. Dimmed like someone lowered the exposure. I excused myself and went home. Later that night, while doing dishes, I asked, "Did you edit the holiday card?" Mom glanced over, drying a glass. "You blinked in that shot. It didn't look right." I adjusted it a bit. I hadn't blinked. I remembered staring straight at the camera, hoping for once that maybe I'd look just as polished, just as important. But I didn't shine the way they wanted, so they lowered the brightness, literally. After that, I stopped raising my hand in class. I didn't sign up for clubs. I didn't submit my poems to the school newsletter. I started watching people instead, taking mental notes. I listened when Aileen spun stories about how she had to help me with math, even though I was doing just fine. I watched Jonah get extra attention from Dad just by asking vague questions about mechanics I had actually explained to him the night before. I learned the quiet dance of invisibility, the art of shrinking on cue. There was a saying I stumbled upon years later that finally made sense to me. When the people who are supposed to see you look right past you, it rewires you. It did. I became allergic to recognition. I'd sit in meetings at work, ideas fully formed in my head, but I'd wait for someone else to say them first. I rarely took credit, not because I lacked confidence, but because I had been trained not to expect it to stick. When you're used to being skipped, you start skipping yourself. But something shifted when I started keeping things. I didn't know why at first. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was survival. But after that science fair, I began saving every draft, every code snippet, every sketch. I created backup folders on a school thumb drive I never turned in. I labeled each one with weird, unassuming titles: Notes for Later, Junk Set 4, Random Edits. At birthday dinners, when Mom posted family photos, I took screenshots before she could crop them. I kept copies of the originals. I even started recording audio memos on my old iPod, just snippets of conversations where I'd suggest something, and someone else would get credit. It wasn't rage, it wasn't vengeance, it was preservation. I didn't want to disappear completely. And slowly, I started to notice more. At family parties, Eileen's stories were always retold by Mom with a few upgrades. If Aileen mentioned she was struggling in a subject, it vanished by the next week. "She's gifted, just tired," Mom would say. Meanwhile, I once aced a pop quiz and Mom said, "Oh, good for you, sweetie," and turned back to Jonah's football stats. She didn't just manage the household, she curated the narrative. I became a ghost with a notebook. I watched, I listened, I saved. The silence they trained me into. It didn't mute me, it sharpened me. I didn't know it yet, but my habit of keeping receipts would become my sharpest blade. Sometimes love is just control in a prettier dress. When I was 13, I still thought my mother's decisions were motivated by care. She didn't raise her voice often. She didn't slap or scream. She simply closed doors before I reached them, and when I asked why, she'd sigh and say, "Because I love you. You're sensitive." It took me years to realize that wasn't love. That was censorship dressed up in concern. My wounds didn't bleed. They were stamped, notarized, and filed under "for her own good." That was the most dangerous kind, quiet betrayals in polite envelopes. In 8th grade, I submitted a project to the regional STEM fair. I spent 6 weekends soldering pieces, coding logic loops, and testing with sensors I'd ordered off eBay using babysitting money. I called the project Code Green. I remember the name because I drew a little sprouting leaf on the top of the poster board, thinking it made the title more approachable. I waited weeks for a letter. When nothing came, I told myself the project probably didn't get selected. It stung, but I moved on, kind of. A year later, I was in my Grandma Tanya's kitchen, rummaging for a recipe in the cabinet above her coffee maker. That's when I found it, an unopened envelope wedged between 2 old church cookbooks. It was from the STEM Foundation, dated the month after I'd submitted Code Green. I opened it with trembling fingers. "Congratulations," it began. "You've been selected to attend our Summer Innovation Lab." My knees buckled. I sat on the floor, rereading it over and over. "Tanya," I called. She appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. Her expression shifted when she saw the letter. "I wasn't supposed to let you see that," she said softly. "Why?" I asked. "Why didn't I get this?" "Your mother told them you had anxiety," she murmured, "that you weren't ready to be away from home. She asked them to pull your name quietly. Then she asked me not to tell you." "But you kept it?" She nodded. "I didn't agree then. I still don't. I thought maybe one day you'd need to know." That night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying all the other times I'd been told no, not now, or "it's too much for you." How many of those had been hers, not mine? It wasn't just one act. It was a pattern. One I hadn't even seen because I thought it was protection. When I turned 14, I launched a small blog, just a free one, nothing fancy. I called it Bite by Bite, a place to post tutorials and tech hacks I figured out on my own. I used to sneak into the school's media lab during lunch to scan broken desktop towers for usable parts, then write how-to guides for repairing them. It started with 2 readers, then 5. Then a librarian from a nearby town messaged me asking if I'd do a virtual tutorial for her middle school book club. I felt, for the first time, like my voice mattered. Then, one Monday morning, I opened the dashboard to check comments, and everything was gone. No posts, no drafts, just a blank login screen and a message. Your account has been removed due to repeated violations of content policy. I ran to Mom in a panic. Something happened to my blog, I said. Can we call them? She didn't look up from her phone. No need. I reported it. I blinked. You what? They contacted me after seeing you were underage. I told them you were using plagiarized material, she said calmly. That content wasn't yours, Evelyn. Don't humiliate yourself. I stood frozen. It was mine, I whispered. She raised her eyes, cool and unflinching. It sounded too advanced. They'd never believe it came from you. That night, I didn't cry. I copied every offline version I had of my drafts into a flash drive and labeled it, "Not yours." Theft isn't always about money. Sometimes the thing stolen is belief. My blog wasn't deleted. My voice was... After that, I became smaller. I stopped sharing ideas. I made myself easier. I smiled more in class, offered fewer suggestions, and made sure every sentence sounded hesitant. I learned to soften everything, to start sentences with, "I'm not sure, but maybe," and end with, "just a thought." It wasn't shyness. It was strategy. Learned helplessness isn't about giving up. It's about being taught your effort invites punishment. People called me quiet, polite, reserved. What I was cautious. I had learned that standing out led to being cut down. Better to blend in than to be told you didn't belong. But I never stopped writing. I started keeping backups. Every draft, every script, every tutorial on USB sticks hidden in my sock drawer. I uploaded zipped folders to anonymous cloud drives. I created fake email accounts with names like Maysim and Vidra Tech. Not for fame, not even for recognition. But because I couldn't bear the thought that I'd vanish and no one would know I'd ever been here. My blog's final unsaved post hovered in my memory. I'd written it just before everything disappeared. I think I'm meant to build things that can't be erased. Back then, I thought it was just a poetic way to describe my interest in digital storage. I didn't realize it was my subconscious whispering, "Save yourself, save proof." I didn't know it yet, but that belief would become everything. And that belief didn't fully bloom until the day my name appeared somewhere Mom couldn't delete. Sometimes rebellion isn't loud. It doesn't come with slamming doors or angry outbursts. Sometimes it's just choosing to keep learning when they've already decided who you are. I didn't yell. I didn't run. I opened a cracked laptop I'd pulled out of a recycling bin behind school and decided to teach myself how to write code. The screen was splintered across the corner. 2 keys were missing, no charger, but it turned on, barely, and that was enough. I sold a box of my old craft supplies at the weekend market and bought a used charger for $10. Every day after school, I'd sit behind the public library, just close enough to catch their Wi-Fi signal, and I'd search everything I could. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Python. I didn't even understand most of it in the beginning. But no one was hovering behind me to take it away. No one was asking if this was too much for me. There were no guidance counselors or forms or siblings stealing my ideas. Just me, the screen, and lines of logic that didn't care about titles or family roles. I didn't tell anyone, not Aileen, not Mom, not even Grandma. I hid the laptop in a hollowed-out book cover on my shelf. I named it Mona. After that, every line of code I wrote, I imagined her whispering, "Keep going." If I couldn't be their kind of smart, I remember thinking, I'd build my own kind in silence. I wasn't preparing to escape, not yet. I didn't even know what I was building toward. But every command typed into that machine felt like a thread I could eventually pull myself up by. It was spring when the burnout hit me hard. I wasn't sleeping. School drained me. Home suffocated me. Every move I made felt like walking a tightrope over someone else's expectations. One afternoon, I collapsed in the hallway after gym class. The school nurse called Mom, who didn't answer. She called again, still nothing. So she left a voicemail and sent me to the counselor's office. That's where I met Dr. Singh. He wasn't on our regular rotation, just a private therapist the district contracted with occasionally. He wasn't like the others. He didn't ask me to recite how I felt on a scale from 1 to 10. He asked what made me feel erased. After our first session, he said, "You don't need intervention. You need recognition." I remember blinking at him. That word, recognition. He filed his evaluation. It included words like high functioning, creative processing, and underestimated. I felt seen. 2 weeks later, he disappeared from our insurance. Mom told me the district had rotated him out, but a new therapist appeared, a family friend named Dr. Melvin, who didn't ask me a single personal question before signing a form stating I had mild cognitive dysfunction with a strong possibility of future deterioration. I found the paper on Mom's desk one afternoon while dropping off the mail. It was half slid under a folder labeled Evelyn, Special Programs. The word dysfunction was highlighted. That night, I searched the trash bin in the garage. I don't know what I was hoping to find. And there it was, in a torn folder. Dr. Singh's original report, folded, crumpled, but legible. Highly verbal, gifted in logic-based tasks, undervalued in her current environment. Do not pathologize. I sat on the garage floor and just stared at those words. It wasn't just me against circumstance. It was me against a curated story. I wasn't the broken one. I was the inconvenient one. That night, I started scanning documents. I used the printer at school when no one was around. Medical forms, teacher comments, even my own old report cards. I backed them all up on a flash drive I labeled iArchive. I encrypted it and stored a copy in cloud folders under random names. Factual box, Cam Files 89, Photos R3. I started saving everything. Every comment Mom made that sounded suspicious, every change in how a teacher treated me, every copy of paperwork she kept from me. I stopped being passive. I stopped hoping someone would see the truth. I began building proof of it. That was the day I stopped seeing myself as a misunderstood kid. I started seeing myself as evidence. Every person has a threshold. That was mine. I researched famous women in tech, Katherine Johnson, Radia Perlman, Ada Lovelace. None of them had it easy. Most had to smile while being told, "You're not quite right for this." But they kept going. They left trails. So I left mine. At 16, I started freelancing under the username GrayNote42. I fixed broken blog themes, debugged plugins, created landing pages for local food trucks that didn't care about credentials, only results. I got paid in digital gift cards at first, but I made it work. My first $25 card bought me a new flash drive. I named it Factual Me. There was a specific kind of thrill watching my code compile without errors. It was clean, immediate, honest. No one could say it was theirs. One night, sitting at my desk while the house was asleep, I watched the screen go green after hours of testing a script that filtered product data for an online catalog. I whispered out loud, "That's mine. All mine." And for the first time, I believed it. But secrets, even the strong ones, aren't always safe forever, especially when your enemy sleeps under your roof. Cruelty doesn't always come as fists or files. Sometimes it comes disguised as applause, tucked inside a smile, wrapped in words like, "just teasing," or "you're too sensitive." They didn't hit me, they clapped. Mom once told me, "Honey, if people laugh at you, it's better than being ignored." But she never considered that laughter could be a sharper knife than silence. Southern women know that best. A well-placed, "bless your heart," can cut deeper than a slap. And I learned that lesson at 16, seated stiffly on a folding chair at a weekend retreat she claimed was a confidence booster. The pamphlet called it a young ladies' leadership intensive. What it really was, a crash course in how to disappear with poise. "You don't smile enough," Mom said in the car. "People find you cold. A little effort won't kill you." At the retreat, the coach, Miss Gale, was all pastel cardigans and forced charm. She opened with, "Ladies, a man doesn't remember your resume. He remembers how you made him feel." By lunch, I wanted to vomit. We practiced walking with books balanced on our heads, folding napkins into swans, and making lists of our most graceful female role models. One girl wrote down Michelle Obama. Miss Gale gently redirected her. Someone less dominant, perhaps? I wrote myself and scratched it out before she saw. Later that afternoon, during a quiet break, I approached her. Why do we only talk about how to please others? I asked. Shouldn't leadership involve ideas? She smiled too widely. Your mother says you've always had a defiance problem. That's not very becoming. That sentence stayed with me longer than any lesson I learned that weekend. They weren't teaching femininity. They were teaching erasure dressed in pearls. I came home more silent than I left. 2 weeks passed. I focused on school, coding, and kept my thoughts to myself. Then one Friday, I heard laughter downstairs. Sharp, uncontrollable, crowd-like laughter. My heart dropped. As I crept toward the living room, I heard my sister's voice. She does this thing where she starts explaining websites like she invented the internet, Eileen said. A video was playing on her phone, connected to the TV. My face was on the screen. Aileen had made a TikTok, a skit. She was mimicking me, overpronouncing tech jargon, adjusting fake glasses, and pretending to fall asleep mid-sentence. Caption: This is what growing up with a genius in her own mind looks like. There were 40,000 views. One comment read, "She always gave homeschool energy." Another, "You sure she's related?" I didn't speak. I didn't blink. I turned, walked upstairs, and shut my door. Then I deleted every open file on my laptop, disconnected my backup drive, hid it beneath the floorboard. Aileen knocked 10 minutes later. "Hey, it was just a joke," she called through the door. "You need to lighten up." No response. "It's not like anyone knows it's you." Still nothing. She sighed. "You're so dramatic." I stared at the blank monitor in front of me, pulse hammering behind my eyes. Jokes are weapons with punchlines, especially when the family hands you the ammunition. That night, I scrubbed my online presence, deleted my profiles, changed every username, started using VPNs, rerouted IPs. Every freelance gig I applied for had a new alias. EY by noted. I created a new email, used burner accounts to communicate. I stopped being visible, not because I was ashamed, but because I refused to give them another inch. It's not paranoia if your enemies wear your last name. By the end of the week, even my closest online contacts didn't know who I was anymore. I learned to work silently. I stopped using my real name on any deliverable, removed metadata from every file, saved nothing in plain sight. Mom praised me for being less emotional, said I was finally maturing. She had no idea. The truth was, I had just become untraceable. I didn't confront her. I didn't confront Eileen. What was the point? They already decided who I was. I couldn't change their story, but I could write my own. Somewhere they couldn't touch it. I wrote one sentence on a sticky note and pressed it to my mirror. You don't need permission to outgrow their vision. That line became my compass. I buried myself in new platforms, no longer just websites and blog themes. I started studying neural networks, experimenting with open-source AI. I took free courses under fake names, downloaded PDFs, joined Discord servers under initials and emojis. One night, while working on a back-end script for a client's scheduling tool, I got my first PayPal deposit, $200. I stared at the notification. They paid me for something I built, on my terms. In that moment, every word, every laugh, every erased credit, every canceled blog, every silent dinner, they all cracked and fell away like old plaster. Let them laugh. I was busy buying my exit. It's one thing to be called a failure. It's another to have it written down, stamped, filed, and mailed to every institution that might one day hold your future. People say sticks and stones break bones, but paperwork? Paperwork can erase you. I overheard them in the kitchen. Mom and my school counselor, Mrs. Downey, sipping coffee like they were discussing a bake sale. She's not progressing in the same way, Mom said softly, voice dripping concern. We're just trying to figure out what support looks like. Mrs. Downey nodded. It's good that you're being proactive. They both laughed gently. I stood behind the half-closed door, invisible. My stomach tightened. I already knew that tone. Concern with a leash attached. Later that afternoon, I found the form. It was sitting on the corner of the kitchen table under a stack of coupons. The header read, Request for Academic Reassessment. Under diagnoses, cognitive delay, mild impairment. There was a thick red stamp near the bottom, to be added to permanent file. When I confronted her that evening, I wasn't angry. I was confused. "You're telling people I'm impaired?" I held up the form. She didn't flinch. "It's a precaution, Evelyn. You've been under a lot of stress lately. This will help you qualify for extra support." "But I don't need support," I said. "I need space to prove I can do more." She exhaled. "Sweetheart, you get so easily overwhelmed. This is just a way to protect your options. You'll thank me later." I didn't thank her. I went to Mrs. Downey the next morning. She looked surprised. "Your mother told us this was a mutual decision. I never agreed to anything." "I see." Her eyes shifted away. "We're just trying to make sure you're comfortable. You'll stay in your current track. Less pressure." Comfortable. That word again. I left the office, walked to the bathroom, locked the stall door, and sat on the toilet lid. I pulled out my phone and typed a note. "They're filing my limits. I need to start filing my potential." That night, Grandma Tanya showed up with an envelope. She handed it to me without a word. "What is this?" "From your dad," she said. "He left it with me before things fell apart." I opened it at my desk, hands shaking. Inside was an old external hard drive, the plastic casing cracked on one corner. It hummed to life the moment I plugged it in. Folders popped up, each one marked simply E. There were photos of my second-grade science fair, me beaming in front of a volcano model with coded temperature sensors, video clips of me reading books 2 grades above my level, audio recordings of bedtime conversations with Dad, me asking questions about circuits, atoms, the way the internet worked. And then, a single audio file. For Evelyn. His voice, clear, steady. "If you're hearing this, it means the truth has been buried long enough. You've always been more than what they wanted you to believe. You are not broken. You are not slow. You are mine, and you are brilliant." I couldn't breathe. Then I whispered, "Then I'll be more than they planned to stop." That night, I stayed up scanning everything, every paper, every award, every teacher note from the days before the diagnosis. I created a folder titled Backup E. I encrypted it. I duplicated it across 2 cloud services, one on a spare USB hidden inside a hollow hairbrush, the other in an old email account I hadn't touched since middle school. I renamed every file, gave them safe labels. Math Camp Proof, STEM Praise Teachers, Dad Audio. I wasn't just documenting my past, I was building a defense. I even started writing a file I called Timeline of My Undeniable Intelligence. Dates, teachers, comments. Achievements. The years before they decided to clip my wings, and I kept digging. Old report cards that listed me as advanced comprehension. Emails from teachers telling Mom I needed challenge, not comfort. Printouts of my early test scores. Before the reassessment changed everything. "If they built a case to break me," I wrote in my notes, "I will build a file to outlast them." Days later, I brought the hard drive to Grandma. She sat at the kitchen table, reading glasses perched on her nose. "So, you opened it?" I nodded. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" She sighed. "Because your mother threatened to cut me off. She said I was confusing you, that I was undoing her structure." "She erased me," I said. "She made the world think I was slow. She handed them paperwork to prove it." "I know. Why didn't you fight her?" She looked down. "Because I didn't want to lose you altogether." I thought, maybe if I stayed quiet, I could still be around to help one day. There was silence between us for a moment, then she added, "But I've always known, you were the brightest star in that dim house." I looked up, meeting her eyes. I didn't need another apology, I needed something else. "Then it's time I make my light impossible to ignore." They gave me one name, I earned another. For most of my life, I was the dumb one, the quiet one, the background filler in a family full of curated stars. But in the world I built from scraps and shadows, the only thing that mattered was the work. No titles, no bias, just code, results, and truth. I submitted the pitch to a startup accelerator under the alias EY Noted. It was a rough prototype of my AI education platform, software that could adapt reading comprehension tools to different learning styles. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a polished logo. But I had an algorithm that worked. It learned the way I had to, quietly, carefully, under pressure. I filmed my demo in the basement, using a phone taped to a broken tripod. I edited the video on the same glitchy laptop I'd repaired 3 years ago. I wore a hoodie, no face, just screen captures, voiceover, and the product itself. I uploaded it to a niche tech forum. 3 days later, it exploded. Shares. Comments. People asking for beta invites, educators, parents, developers. And then the email came from Forbes. Hi, EY noted. We're compiling our top 30 under 30 in emerging edtech list and would love to feature your platform. Let us know if you're interested. I stared at the screen for 5 minutes straight. Then I stood up, walked out to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. They didn't ask for my degree. They didn't ask who my family was. They didn't know my mother. They didn't care what the school files said. They just liked the work. Forbes ran the article using a cropped image from my LinkedIn burner, nothing with my full name, just EY noted, age 20, independent software developer. My prototype got its own paragraph, and the article closed with, proof that talent often grows where no one is looking. I read it 10 times. They didn't need to know my name to respect my work, I whispered. Which means I've been lied to my whole life. That night, I received a text. Aileen. WTF Evelyn, is this for real? Attached was a screenshot of her Instagram story. My profile, my work, my photo. Posted with, wait, is this my little sister? And a trail of wide-eye emojis. My phone buzzed again. Family group chat. Cousin Kayla, why didn't you tell us? Uncle Ray. This is amazing. Mom said nothing. Dad's name stayed gray, silent, absent as always. Then Aileen called. I let it ring once, twice. I answered. I thought Mom said that came from some MIT startup, she blurted. That you were just helping test it or something? It came from someone she didn't think could build it. Long silence. Then softer. I didn't know. You didn't ask. She exhaled. Look, I didn't mean for... I'm not here to make you feel better about it. Click. The next morning, I had 4 missed calls and 8 new messages. Extended family. People I hadn't spoken to since Grandma's last birthday party. I always knew you had something special. Your mom told us you were sick. Can we get an interview for our school newsletter? It was funny how quickly narratives flipped when strangers started clapping. 1 year ago, Mom told me to stop pretending to be techie. Now suddenly, I was a prodigy. I didn't delete any of the old messages. I kept the one where she said, it's cute that you're trying to do something with computers. The one where she emailed my school suggesting I'd benefit from a creative break. I took screenshots and saved them next to the Forbes article. Receipts weren't petty. They were survival. I wasn't stupid. I knew what was coming. So I prepared. I moved every file to cloud storage, archived every version of the project, created backups of every legal document, protected my accounts with 2-factor authentication, changed every password. Then I called Grandma Tanya. They saw it, I said. She didn't ask who. She didn't need to. Good, she replied. But keep your head down. Amelia won't like it. She's already quiet. Quiet's when she's most dangerous. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. That weekend, I launched the beta version of my platform. This time, I used my full name. No more aliases, no more borrowed silence, just Evelyn Yates, the girl they said was too broken to learn, the girl who was now teaching machines how to teach. I stood at the edge of the living room, laptop open, watching the traffic climb. Thousands of users, hundreds of signups, teachers requesting demos. And then I said it out loud. Let's see them try to erase me now. But power hates exposure. And mine had just begun. They loved the idea of my success, until it didn't fit their version of who I was. Families like mine don't hate achievement. They just need to own it. If they can't hold your trophy, they'll pretend they designed it. They want you to fly, but only in a cage they built. I thought the Forbes feature would be the moment they'd finally see me. I was wrong. The call came 2 days after the article went live. Evelyn, Mom's voice was calm, too calm. You need to contact Forbes. They made a mistake. I blinked. Excuse me? They must have confused you with someone else. That girl from MIT you mentioned once. What was her name? There's no confusion, I said flatly. I think you should clarify it before they print a correction. These things spiral. No. There was a pause. Then Dad's voice joined in. He must have been on speaker. Sweetheart, think of how this looks. Think of your sister. I could feel the tears forming, not from pain, but from fury. You mean, think of how this threatens the version of the story you've been feeding everyone? We just don't want you to embarrass yourself, Mom snapped. I hung up. They weren't correcting a mistake. They were trying to erase my truth. That night, Aileen posted a status on Facebook. Proud of the family legacy I helped shape. Innovation runs in the bloodline. Hundreds of likes, clapping emojis, people congratulating her on what her sister had accomplished thanks to her example. Then I saw the comment from Mom. You've always been the visionary. Evelyn learned from the best. I stared at the screen. Screenshots, all of it. One by one, comment by comment. I didn't reply right away. But the next morning, I posted one line. Not this time. If you won't name me when I struggle, you don't get to rename me when I win. Then I got to work. I opened a new thread on Twitter and began laying out a timeline. Day 1. My first concept sketch. Time-stamped. Screenshots of the code. Video of my first test run, voice shaking as I explained the interface. GitHub logs, forum posts under EYY noted, payments, chat logs, no names, no direct callouts, just facts. Within hours it spread. People started commenting. She's the real thing. Why would they lie about her? This family should be ashamed. I didn't respond to a single message. I didn't have to. The silence spoke louder than anything I could have typed. Then the media picked it up. Tech prodigy pushes back on family's claim. A battle over brilliance. A daughter's code rewrites the family script. Mom didn't call. Neither did Dad. Aileen blocked me. Good. I opened my LinkedIn and replaced my avatar with a professional headshot. I updated my name, Evelyn Yates, CEO, founder, Learnable.ai. I built a press page, posted my first public statement. I was never the smart one in my family's story. So I wrote my own. Within a day, I had invites from 2 podcasts, 1 Women in Tech panel, and a documentary pitch. Recognition, when you stop asking for it, becomes real. I ordered new business cards, booked a photographer for branding, scheduled my first media call. The morning after the article hit national attention, my phone lit up again. Mom's cell. I stared at the screen. Then, with a slow breath, I tapped block. But blocking her number didn't stop her. She found another way in. The hardest battles aren't against rumors, they're against records. Once something's printed, stamped, and filed away, it takes on a life of its own. The damage isn't just emotional, it's bureaucratic. And the worst part? No one questions paperwork when it's signed by a mother. They always say, the pen is mightier than the sword. They don't tell you that both can gut you just the same. 3 days after the Forbes article hit, I got an email from my father's former attorney. The subject line, urgent, document review. My stomach dropped before I even clicked. Evelyn, it read, we've uncovered documentation related to your father's trust. I believe you're entitled to review the materials. Please call me. I did. He sounded tired and cautious. Did you know your mother transferred the shares of your father's startup to your sister? What? 2 years ago. She filed under guardian authority, citing your mental instability. I have a copy of the power of attorney she submitted. The signature on your father's document doesn't match anything else in our files. She forged it. I can't legally say that, but you may want to consider filing a challenge. Retroactive fraud is difficult to prove, but not impossible. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the wall for a long time, listening to my own breath, counting each inhale like it was borrowed. They didn't just doubt me, they erased me, on paper, in bank accounts, in history. Later that evening, I walked to the local coffee shop to clear my head. While waiting for my drink, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Evelyn? I turned. It was Marco. We hadn't spoken since middle school. He'd always been kind, low-key, good with circuits. Wow, he said. I just read that article. Was that really your platform? Yeah, I said, unsure how much to say. I still remember that science fair project you did. The solar panel sensors. You built that all on your own, right? I nodded slowly. You remember that? Of course. I was working on that water turbine thing, remember? Your mom told the teacher you had help, but we all saw you building it every lunch break, every single recess. The validation landed like a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. Would you be willing to write a statement? I asked quietly. He paused, then smiled. Absolutely. That night, I pulled up my backup drive and started a new folder. Legal Proof EY. I uploaded screenshots of emails, time-stamped code, every test file, and every academic record from before the diagnosis shift. I scanned my dad's handwritten notes, especially the one from our final project together before he died. At the bottom of one page, in his clean block letters, "You are the founder. No one else gets to say that." Grandma helped me dig through the mail. Hidden among credit card statements and catalogs was a letter he'd written to me the year he passed. Evelyn, I don't know what version of you they'll try to sell the world. Just remember, the one I knew was always 2 steps ahead. I saved that in the archive, too. By morning, I had a digital wall of evidence. My life turned into a case file. I emailed it to my lawyer and added, if they can build a lie with paper, I can build the truth with code. Later that afternoon, I sat by the window and opened the document that had gutted me, the forged transfer. I read every word, every signature, every date. I traced her handwriting, line by line. My mother had planned this carefully. The date of filing was 3 weeks after my supposed diagnosis. The notary was one of her bridge club friends. It was a performance sealed in ink. I broke. I sank to the floor, head against the wall. This wasn't just theft, I whispered. It was identity laundering. I stayed there for almost an hour. Then I stood up, and I wrote a new public post. You can't legally inherit brilliance. You have to earn it. People shared it. Journalists reached out. Former classmates messaged me privately. Some apologized. Some admitted they never really questioned the things they'd heard. I didn't respond. I wasn't building a reputation anymore. I was reclaiming it. That night, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, eyes puffy but focused. If they used paper to destroy me, I said aloud, I'll use proof to build myself. I clicked send on the fraud claim, but I didn't know that the paper I filed would make her go for blood. When someone loses power, they don't always let go. Sometimes they repackage it as protection. That's exactly what Mom did. She didn't scream, she signed. It had been exactly 1 week since I filed the fraud complaint about the forged inheritance documents. Just enough time for her to recover, regroup, and strike back. But I wasn't ready for the form her revenge would take. A beige envelope arrived at my apartment door, hand-delivered. I opened it without reading the return address. Inside, a legal notice. My mother had filed for emergency guardianship, over me. I sat down, rereading the words again and again. Citing ongoing mental instability, public delusions of grandeur, inability to manage personal and professional affairs. I scanned for the name of the county court. It wasn't even Plano. It was some rural town I'd never heard of, 3 counties over. Probably to dodge attention. She didn't come with lectures this time. She came with ink. The documents included forged psychiatric notes, pages of outdated report cards, edited to exclude my early awards, even a letter from a licensed counselor, who I quickly discovered was her bridge club friend from church. My hands trembled, but I didn't call her. I called the legal aid line instead. Within an hour, I was speaking to a civil rights attorney named Fiona Clay. She's trying to make you a legal child, Fiona said bluntly. This isn't about your safety. This is about ownership. She wants to undo everything. She wants control on record, but we're not letting that happen. I gathered everything I had: the Forbes article, academic transcripts, tax returns, even my therapy evaluations. Fiona read through it all and looked me straight in the eye over Zoom. We're not fighting a parent. We're fighting a narrative. In the days that followed, I joined private online groups filled with stories just like mine, women whose families had quietly taken away their adulthood through paperwork. Conservatorships filed quietly. Diagnoses manipulated. Careers stalled. Rights revoked. One woman wrote, "If your light burns too bright, some will try to call it a fire hazard." That line stayed with me. I told only Tanya what was happening. She came over that afternoon, saw the documents spread across my table, and placed her hand on mine. "We're going to fix this," she said. "I'll give the judge a statement." Her words were more than comfort. They were a weapon I never expected to have. In her declaration, she wrote, "Evelyn was raised to think she needed permission to be excellent. She doesn't. She never did." The judge received it the next morning. That same day, we were granted an expedited hearing. It would all be decided next Tuesday. For the first time, I was the one being seen in a courtroom, not hidden in the corner of someone else's version of the story. That night, I sat on my bed with files all around me. Color-coded tabs, labeled folders, USB backups. I laid them out like an exhibit. "She wanted control," I whispered. "She's going to get consequences." My laptop blinked with reminders. Call with the attorney, print affidavits, organize witness letters. But I stayed in front of the mirror longer than I should have. I needed to see what I looked like when I wasn't shrinking. I pulled my shoulders back. "She'll see me tomorrow," I whispered. All of me. But what she didn't know was, I wasn't coming alone. When people stop clapping for your downfall, they start confessing. It's not a proverb anyone quotes aloud. It's one you live through. A silent rule written in family bloodlines. Betrayal, when it reverses course, never arrives soft. It arrives soaked in guilt, tied with a bow of hesitation. I walked into that courtroom expecting a knife. Instead, I was handed a rope, one someone else had finally decided to drop. The benches were cold, the lights too sterile. Lawyers shuffled papers like they were prepping for a school presentation instead of something that could ruin or reclaim my life. Mom sat at the front, pristine as ever. Perfectly tailored blazer, arms folded with elegance, not tension. She didn't look at me. The judge entered. We all stood. Then it began. Her attorney went first. "Your Honor, we're here because Ms. Amelia Yates has filed for emergency guardianship over her daughter, Evelyn Yates, citing patterns of emotional instability, erratic behavior, and public delusions. This action is not meant to punish, it is meant to protect." I clenched my hands in my lap. My attorney leaned over. "Breathe." He stood. "Your Honor, we intend to show that this petition is not based in concern, but in retaliation. That the respondent, Ms. Evelyn Yates, is a published developer, a founder of a funded platform, and a mentally stable adult with full autonomy, and that the petitioner's actions are part of a long-standing pattern of suppression." They began presenting achievements, income records, the Forbes article, psychiatric evaluations. None of it surprised me, but the moment that followed did. A chair scraped. Aileen stood up. "Excuse me," she said, glancing at the judge. "May I submit a personal statement?" My breath caught. The room stilled. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Are you listed as a witness?" "No, ma'am, but I'd like to be heard." He nodded. "You may proceed." She walked to the front, hands trembling, voice uneven. "I've watched my sister get dimmed, denied, and dressed up in someone else's failures. I've watched our mother bend stories to suit her fears, and I've played along. Until now." She paused, pulling a folded page from her purse. She started coding before any of us believed in her. I remember the STEM camp letter that got pulled, the blog that disappeared. I knew, and I stayed quiet. I was wrong. Then she looked straight at our mom. "You're not scared she'll get hurt. You're scared she'll outshine you." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. A few people whispered, My knees didn't buckle, but they came close. Mom didn't blink. "They're exaggerating," she said coolly when her turn came. "They've always misunderstood me. I did what I thought was right." The judge sifted through forms, tapping her pen. "I'm seeing inconsistencies, discrepancies in filing dates, conflicts between psychiatric statements." Behind me, Tanya leaned in and whispered, "The mask never holds forever." I looked forward again, this time not at Mom, but through her. "You don't get to define me anymore." The judge called both attorneys forward, reviewed documents silently for a moment, then spoke clearly and without flair. "This court finds no legal basis for guardianship. Furthermore, we are referring the petitioner for review of potential fraud related to previous filings." She turned to me. "Ms. Yates, your rights remain intact. You may pursue further legal action as you see fit." I exhaled, finally. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. I ignored them. In the hallway, Tanya hugged me. Aileen stood a few feet back. I walked over. We didn't speak. She opened her arms. I nodded and stepped into them. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. I didn't need her apology. I just needed to see her lie lose. But what do you do after winning a war you never asked for? Some endings aren't gentle. They're written in all caps. After everything, the theft, the erasure, the court battles, I'm learning that real healing isn't a quiet sigh. It's an action, a boundary, an unapologetic declaration of truth. If they wanted me silent, they should have never taught me how to spell my name. I'm not whispering anymore. My startup office in Austin hums with energy. Late afternoon light filters through the windows. It's been exactly 1 month since the judge ruled in my favor, and I reclaimed the narrative. Today, I'm not just launching a product, I'm launching a statement. Unlabeled is more than a name. It's a statement. I gather the team, 6 of us huddled around my laptop. "Here's the promo reel," I say. "Watch this." The screen lights up with childhood photos, me hiding behind my mom at Christmas, the faded holiday card where my face was blurred, glimpses of me as a kid coding late at night, and then the Forbes cover, full and shining. Our tagline unspools across the screen. For those who were mislabeled, underestimated, or erased. Our PR manager, Sarah, claps softly. "This is powerful. It'll land nationally." I nod. "I've hired a firm. We're scheduling a TEDx talk, a podcast tour, investigative pieces in publications about toxic family dynamics and reclaiming agency. I feel the proof of reversal, this time not private but public." Then there's a court filing. I open it. My heart beats faster. My legal team has charged my mother with fraudulent guardianship, falsified medical documents, financial misappropriation of my father's startup inheritance. The title catches my eye. Plano woman faces charges for attempting to control adult daughter's finances. Local news picks it up. Comments flood social media. Many support me. A few question the family drama. I don't respond. She wrote me out. I turned that page, permanently. Later that evening, I sit alone at my kitchen table. I've prepared 1 envelope. No return address, no letter inside. Just 1 printed image taped to cardstock. Side by side, the family's old family roles chart and the Forbes cover with just me, no labels. On the back, in black ink, I rewrote it, no co-authors allowed. I seal the envelope and mail it to Mom's house the next morning. Then I delete her number from my phone, block her emails. It's not vindictive, it's necessary. She had access to my life. I'm reclaiming it. Closure isn't a door they close. It's one you build, bolt, and walk past without looking back. A few weeks later, I sit at my desk, window open to a warm Texas morning. I reflect. They were right to be afraid of what I'd become, not because I was dangerous, but because I don't need permission anymore. Some milestones. My team has grown to 20+ employees. I mentor young women in STEM, guiding them so they don't wait to be introduced. I've joined advocacy efforts for legal reform around guardianship abuse. They gave me a label. I built an empire. I'm not signing something out of fear. This time, I sign with pride. If you ever wondered who I became, check the byline. I don't hide behind anyone anymore.